leaders who don't understand marketing are part of the struggle in this world.
Also, do you invest in startups as well?
I do. I do angel investments. I do a little bit of advisory. I do a little bit of investing and so forth. Yes. First, creators are becoming founders, right? That's the first thing that's happening, right? And what I mean by that is people who've been traditionally creating are realizing that they have the one thing that matters the most, which is distribution, right? That was the guy who mowed lawns, sold, shoveled snow in the winter. I would have come up with creative ways to sell and make money.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of BizUp. This is episode 3 and today I have with me Mr. Jimmy Kim, who is the CEO and founder of Email Marketer, which helps SaaS companies with word of mouth activities to get leads. He's also the CEO and founder of Commerce Roundtable, which is a community for digital marketers. And he was the founder and CEO of Sendlane, a behavior-based email and SMS marketing platform for D2C brands. Let's have a conversation with him today.
Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Excited to join the pod.
Yeah. So Jimmy, my first question to you is that so you have been a serial entrepreneur basically, and I was reading up and I realized that you started your journey from automotive sales, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. So how has your journey been? So how did you enter into entrepreneurship from automotive sales, and how did that transition happen is what I want to know.
Oh man, it's dating me back quite some time, but yeah, I did start my life in automotive. And actually when I was 16 years old, this is how old it started for me. But when I was 16 years old, the role for me was I was washing cars at a dealership. And when I came back to my summer break from college at the age of 18, I had come back to come find my job. And unfortunately, the job was not available anymore because I had filled the role. So when I was leaving and walking out, the general manager pulled me aside and was like, hey, you've been with us for 3 years washing cars in the back. You obviously know everything about the dealership and the cars here. Why don't you come inside this summer and sell cars with us? And I said, okay, that sounds fun. And so I went in to sell cars, and it's kind of what kicked off my career. I would say that was one of my first pivotal moments. And what it taught me was the art of sales and understanding what it really meant to go and convince someone to make a purchase. And, anyone who's been in the world of, the world knows that car sales is one of the most toughest industries in the market to be a person in. And for me, being naive and young and not really knowing too much, I went off and talked to anyone and everybody and ensured that I made sure that I talked to as many people as I wanted. And the result ended up being that I was starting to make some significant money. And the story goes on like one of these fun stories. I made a lot of money that summer, and I went to my parents that fall, and I was like, hey, I want to take a pause from school. I don't want to go back to college. I want to go sell more cars. And, being a first generation Asian immigrant from, Korea, my parents weren't thrilled about it, but, they were always great and supportive and understanding. And they were like, okay, fine. You can take a quarter off or a semester off and then go do this. Well, that semester became 2 semesters became 3. And eventually I never ended up making it back. But what did happen was I was very ambitious at what I did and how I kind of moved up the ranks really quickly at the dealership. And within a couple of years, I went from sales to finance to sales manager to general manager eventually of 3 Saturn stores within about a 5-6 year progression. So I did it extremely fast, but I was also really good at it. I was a workaholic. I worked 80 hours a week, and I was doing it in and day out, and that's what I lived my life for. And so the way that the entrepreneur journey had come in, I was always somewhat of an entrepreneur. When I look back before I started getting jobs, I was always doing something, right? I was the guy who mowed lawns, sold, shoveled snow in the winter. I would have come up with creative ways to sell and make money. And I've always understood that money would create the outcome that I wanted, which was to get something, a desire, a memory, whatever it might have been. And so I always had that spirit, but, I was working, and it was about 2008 and the whole recession had hit. That was the last big recession in the United States.
Yeah.
And when that happened, the car dealer world imploded. And, it didn't die, of course, but it really struggled. And I had started to feel down about the fact that I've been doing this thing for 9 years, and I wasn't excited about what I saw into the future. But the thing that I did see into the future that was really exciting was the internet. right? The internet was rising. The dot-com bubble had collapsed, but then reconfigured and came back up. And I knew there was something special there, but I didn't know what I could do there. So I had a friend that lived down the street that we used to hang out all the time. We'd go work out together. We'd hang out. He'd travel a lot. So whenever he was home, I would go hang out and see him. And one day I kind of just asked him, like, hey, what do you do? And he kind of told me about what he did online. He was on the internet. He was teaching people how to do affiliate marketing or PPC marketing through Google AdWords. And I said, well, that's pretty cool. Like, how do I learn? And he was like, well, you can learn it this way or that way. And one thing led to another in a conversation. He's like, you know what? If you're really looking and getting serious about this, there's something we could do together. And what you could do together is you come from an operational scale and a business background, and you could come into my business and you can help me do the things that I do in my business and teach me. And at the same time, what I'll do is I'll teach you everything I know about the internet and how I'm out there marketing and making money online. And so I made the agreement and deal. And, it was a big shift for me to go from suit and tie and 80 hours a week to jumping into this internet that, I was always tech savvy, but I was never like great on the internet or learning a lot of things. So I had to learn a lot of things. And so that's kind of what sparked me into it. And I worked for the guy for about 3 years. And, what was cool about it was I learned a lot. There was times where he had gone away for a month or two for different things that he needed to take care of. And I was running the organization as the president. And it really taught me really quickly what I needed to do and what I learned. And it also taught me where I got really good and understanding. So that was the start. And then that just kind of blossomed for me, right? I blossomed to that. And I said, all right, in 2011, I was like, all right, I'm ready to go off and do my own business thing. And so I did, right? I started off and I went off and started my very own business. My very first business was not the typical business that most people see. I was actually learned so much from the guy before about affiliate marketing. I actually went and executed those things and became an affiliate marketer through SEO and email lists and different things where I was very middlemaning it. And I was just doing it for myself. I was basically selling third-party products, digital books or physical items. And I was just basically promoting as the middleman, had blogs and reviews and stuff. And I was making some good money. And then the next kind of transition occurred for me when I realized that people started asking me how I was doing it and if they could pay me to go do it. And then that naturally made me become a content creator. And I started to say, well, maybe I could teach people how to do this and maybe they'll pay me for it. And that was like kind of like my next progression into it. Now, during all that time, the way that I got into e-commerce, which is where, direct-to-consumer retail, I got into a lot of that stuff along the way. And the way that I got into that was really interesting too, was that a friend of mine had hit me up and they said, hey, I have a purchase order for $50,000 that I need to fulfill on this new product that I've been building that I want to go sell. He had owned a retail boutique clothing store and he was selling other people's stuff, but he had created his own merchant line and he needed money to go produce it so he could go sell it to different retailers. And so I gave him the money and I said, here's the money. We're good. Let me know when you can pay me back. Well, a couple months later, I went back to go collect the money and I went to go check him out in the store. I had never been in the store. So I walked in, I checked it out. It's like, this is cool, man. Sounds like you did well. And he's like, yeah, we sold out of the product. It was going great. I said, great, man. Well, how did you do online? And he looked at me and he said, oh, we don't have an online yet. And I said, well, this sounds like a really nice opportunity for me because at this point I had really understood the online market. Shopify was something brand new in the market still. It was 2012, 2013. It was still kind of very new and, coming up in the world. And I said, well, let me go build your online thing and you continue to focus on the retail and the product stuff. And let me be your partner instead of taking that money back. And I'll even invest some more money in so that we can go grow this thing. And so that's how I ended up getting into the online world for the next 3-4 years. We grew and scaled that thing into direct-to-consumer brand. And then on the other side, my content creator business, and this is one of those things you hear about natural evolution of business. So I started as an affiliate marketer, became a content creator. And then the third thing I really quickly realized was that when people were buying my product and software and my product and teachings and learnings, they were getting stuck on the execution phase because they couldn't find the tools to do it. They didn't know how to go off and do the things that I was doing, and they were getting stuck. And at that time, things like Upwork, well, it was called Odesk, I think, back then. And essentially, I learned that you can go off and hire developers, and they can go help you build single-use products, essentially, things to solve simple problems. So I went off and hired a bunch of people, and I started to invest in it. I had no idea what I was doing, but I eventually created these softwares, and I would sell software. So that business had evolved into a software business. Now, the e-commerce business or the software business, content creator business, there was one core element of both businesses. I had already grown so much in love with email that I realized that email was a great foundation, but we were struggling with the platforms that exist in the market at that time. No one really understood what we were doing. They didn't like the type of business we were doing. Doing digital marketing was not a big thing back in 2013. And so it was myself and two other guys were sitting around a table at a conference one time, and we're talking about our woes and troubles and struggles that we had with our company. And they were all revolving around email. And I looked at them and said, hey guys, I've been building software with these guys and I've been offshoring it. Why don't we just put some money together and eventually we can build our own software to do what we need to do for our businesses. We can stop paying these third parties and we can start doing it for ourselves. And so we did that. And so for the next couple of years, we were just building this software. It did exactly what we needed to do. It made us a lot of money, and we were kind of building it together. All of that led to 2017. This was probably my big pivotal year. In 2017, I got an acquisition offer from my software company, this other company, and someone wanted to offer me a bunch of money for it. And well, I thought, hey, you know what? I'll take the payday. So I took that, sold that thing. At the same time, my brand had scaled to about $10 million on the internet, and we were doing pretty cool with it. But the reality was that myself and my partner were having creative differences. Basically, the long story short was I wanted to scale and keep pushing. He was a designer. He was a creative. He wanted to slow it down. And to me, that didn't align with me because I saw such opportunity in that business. So I said, hey, buy me out. Let's part ways. Let's move forward, and then we can go figure out the thing. And he went off and did some great stuff. And we're still friends today. But the reality was it didn't work out because of that. And really, we weren't making any money because it's really hard to make money in the e-commerce space as it is, and especially in apparel. At that point, I kind of had nothing to do, and I had this software company that was sold and acquired. I was leaving my clothing company, and I looked around and I said, what do I do next? And I looked around and I said, well, we had built this platform for years, and we've been doing such great stuff with it. Why don't I go all in and go build this thing? And at that time, tech startups, SaaS was brand new. All this stuff was new stuff that people were talking about. And I was like, hey, I know how to market. I'll go off and go build this market. And so we did that. And we started off by building the tool. And initially, we had great traction because we knew exactly how to get there, at least the early initial grouping of customers. But the reality was that there was a lot of learnings that I learned along the way, but the big thing was it allowed me to get to enough revenue to go raise a seed fund. And so I went off, I pitched a ton of people. I did the typical story, walking down Sand Hill Road, going to VC and pitching. And eventually a couple of people said yes. And I collected $3 million and it allowed me to go start building. And so, one of the things I was realized as I was building that thing is that everything takes way longer than I expect, especially in the software world, especially when you're trying to build something bigger. So it took me a solid 3 years to build that platform up from about 2018 to about 2021. And in 2021, we finally and officially launched into the market, and we had built this marketing automation platform. It was email and SMS for e-commerce. And we wanted to build for someone who was like myself back in 2013. And so we went off and built that, and we launched it. We went off and raised our Series A at that point. And since then, we just went off and scaled it, right? We grew it, we built it, we raised multiple rounds of funding. And eventually in 2023, I knew that I had been putting almost a decade into this platform, and I was getting bored of the things that I was doing. And I also just didn't really love all the things that I was doing in the everyday situation, and my entrepreneur spirit was being held back. And I made a decision to go hire a CEO and go find somebody to come replace me and run and operate that company so I can go off and do my own thing. So that led me to about a year in the business with the new CEO in place and really recognizing that I needed to move on. And in 2024, I moved on. So it was about July of 2024, I made the decision to kind of separate and move away and walk away from the business. And at that point, I went off and launched a new business, and that's where I'm at today. And today, it's very much a diversification. I would say I took the last 17 years of things that I did, and I kind of really honed down on the things that I really enjoyed doing, and I'm just really focusing on doing those things. And that's including the content side of things. I do a lot of content and media creation. So I'm a host of two podcasts called Send It, which is a podcast about retention marketing, and Awesome Podcast, which is a podcast of agency SaaS operating marketer. It's a perspective show. So I do those 2 podcasts on content. I'm on content on X and LinkedIn. I'm also we have course, we have a community of retention marketers. So I put a ton of people in that is in a paid community of about 350 retention marketers that are in the market that are, learning and growing together. And so I do a lot of that. I do a lot of the event stuff. You mentioned the Commerce Roundtable thing. Again, because of my love for community and the connections and the network I've created to make my life the way it is, I run a community event that's really great, that's out there. It's a direct-to-consumer community event that runs twice a year. And the third thing I do, and the thing that makes me money today, is I run B2B growth for SaaS companies. Essentially, we help SaaS companies use alternative media, things like this podcast or newsletters or influencers or events, to go off and grow and scale their business, to get leads, generate leads, and of course grow awareness. So it's been a really interesting journey over the last 17 years, and I know I kind of sped through all that, but reality is that I learned a lot through that journey. It's been a really exciting journey, and today I'm in a new, fresh era of my journey, and I'll continue doing it, and it's with the love of the internet, ultimately.
Well, I honestly think that is a really great story, and like you mentioned at the beginning that your parents were for first generation immigrants, and so I wanted to just do so, and it also seemed like when you started working in the summer break, where your journey started. Probably money was obviously a great motivator for you back then, and obviously it remained. And I mean, why not? It is the biggest motivator for most people. But was it growing up during that time? Your parents just moved to the US. What was that time like? Did you have financial problems? Was it easy? What were your parents? What did they do? Can
yeah,
you
no,
just
absolutely.
take me there?
So
Yeah.
we were first generation, so we came in and we were in government supplied housing and all the stuff in the early days. So I did grow up very, very much on the lower side of the income things. I definitely had anything and everything that I ever needed, meaning my parents always provided very well for me, and I'm always grateful for that. But the reality was, I look back at it, my parents did not make that much money, right? So there was a lot of motivator that I had to always make my own money ultimately. When I was younger and I wanted something, my motivator was not because I wanted to make money. My motivator was I wanted that final outcome. And so that taught me that I needed to go make money, and making money means hard work and putting your effort into it. So I was never below working on anything in order to find a way to make money, right? I would say today my life is a little bit different, where I've understood that life is a bit different and making money is not always the big driver for me ultimately. And so, money is something that I know how to make, I would say, and it's something that I know how to create. The driver for me is actually freedom and happiness in a very unique way. And what I mean by that is, when I think about freedom and happiness, I'm talking about the ability to do things that I love and the things that I enjoy. And I think that work shouldn't be something that's hard. It should be very easy and should be very enjoyable.
Right. So that was the kind of the realization that you have had with you, as a later part of your journey. Probably as we grow up, we understand that, other things are also important. So what about your own family? Do you have a wife, kids? Are you single? Well,
yeah, absolutely. No, I have a wife. I've got 2 kids, 3 dogs. I've been married for, God, how long now? 11, 12 years. So I met her in the beginning of my entrepreneur journey. So she was with me before I had money. So that was kind of cool, right? So, and then I've had kids. I've got a 6 and a 7-year-old now. So yeah, it's been good. I mean, life changes when you have kids, obviously. And it's been a really fulfilling change that's happened in my life. And everything I do is for the family and our future, right? That's what I work for, and that's what I live for ultimately.
So when did you really start? Because now that I see you have, decent amount of followers on LinkedIn, X, you have some following, you've been creating content regularly, you've built your business around it, the new one that you've just started. When did that journey start? When was you started to leverage these social media platforms and started to create your own brand?
So creating my own brand is an interesting story, because back in 2013, 2012, I had my own brand on like back when Facebook pages were, or follow pages were a big deal. I used to have a brand back there. I used to have a big YouTube channel back in the early days. And then when I went off to go build the clothing store into Sendlane and start building those things off, I kind of forgot about him for many years and I stopped doing it for a while. It wasn't until about 2022 that I came back on the internet and I was like realizing that I had done a poor job representing myself, but also sharing the information that I had learned. And of course, being a part of the internet and connecting with the community and so forth. So it's only been about two and a half years since I really came back online. And what I do is a lot of the same principles of what I did a decade ago back when I did. It was really just sharing a lot of great content, connecting with people, talking to people, and letting people know who I am, but also my expertise and how I can help teach people different things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. So I want to ask you that, like, so we've been hearing a lot about that in 2025, founders need to be creators, need to have their own personal brand. Do you think that's really necessary to build a business, or you think that just helps and it's okay to have, but not a necessity to have?
I think there's two parts to that question that I think about, right? So first of all, the big wave right now is that creators are becoming founders, right? That's the first thing happening, right? And what I mean by that is people who've been traditionally creating are realizing that they have the one thing that matters the most, which is distribution, right? And that leads to the second thing, which is when founders, and I think this is a really interesting thing that a lot of founders are learning, is that first-time founders focus on product and this and that and everything else. Second-time founders focus on one thing, distribution. And so when a founder realizes the connection that distribution is the only thing that really matters and having a community and peace of mind, they turn and look for the right avenue. And reality is that there's a lot of ways to get distribution, but social media tends to be the easiest way to get distribution, and that it's free to do. It takes your own mind share. A lot of people can do enough to figure it out. You can hire the right people to go out and do it. So I do believe that it's becoming more important than ever. Have to. However, if you look back traditionally over the years and years, and you look at Twitter or X now and look at the years of people out in the world, having a social media presence sure makes things easier. And having an easier path of things. And I know people think that, it's hard work and it's whatever and all that stuff that people think about. But the reality is like, how do you get connected with your customers and community? The fastest way is to be on the internet. And the fastest way is to be on social media. So I do believe that it's becoming more important. I don't think it's the only thing, but I think people who are not taking it seriously are going to be left behind over the next couple of years. And especially because generationally, this is probably the biggest thing that I've recognized is generationally what's happening is very simple. If you look at the people who are running, the baby boomers, they're retiring, right? The millennials are getting older, right? Gen Z is starting to fall into the right sphere of what they call business practice and business decision making as they're moving up management. And if you look at the future generation of how things are working, people who are millennials are going to be the ones that are making decisions. Millennials make decisions differently. Gen Z are making decisions differently. Each generation lives in a different bubble. And depending on the industry you work in, a lot of these industries will have different types of people, and those people are found on different mediums. And Gen Z especially, you'll see, is a very community-driven generation. And those generations are looking for people, like-mindedness and alignment with people. And those are also the newest age of buyers and people in the world, right? So like you have to look at a lot of that as part of it. It's a lot to do with a lot of the way things are changing. The old typical way where, people are cold calling and cold emailing still works at some value. But a lot of that doesn't work as much because it's harder on the internet, harder to make phone calls. That's all true. But the reality is the generational people who are making decisions and making purchases have changed. And we have to realize that's where they are. And the people who want to involve themselves on the internet are going to be the way you attract them. And that's really my humble belief in why things have changed.
Do you also think that, so with time, and I've been in marketing for 6-7 years myself, and what I've seen is that a lot of paid channels that we used to rely on, you have your paid ads, you have Google ads, you have Facebook Meta ads, even LinkedIn has its ads now. And so beyond the point after the early adopters are over, It just the customer acquisition cost just keeps increasing so much. And to counter that, either you need like some natural footfall from retail, or you need some exposure in social media, like some kind of. So, as a marketer, like let's say you have a brand and you want to expand something, how much do you think the reliance is still on these paid ads, and how much do you think it should be the focus should be on social media or tying up with more influencers to get that?
I
Because
wouldn't say
yeah,
it's social media. I would say it's organic advertising. So,
yeah,
one of the things that someone has forgotten along the way, and a lot of marketers have forgotten, okay? If you think about like a chart, right? You look at how paid advertising kind of goes up. What's supposed to happen when you have a good business is your paid advertising goes up and it comes down. And while that's coming down, your organic takes a long time and it comes up. And there's an X intersection that occurs where your organic takes off and your paid comes down. The organic, it takes a long time to create. And that may be through social media, through all these different mediums, to creating content, creating community, creating followers, creating awareness. However, a lot of people are too impatient to go off and do that, right? So when you think about what you said, paid advertising in traditional mediums, 100% are great for early adoption, right? Getting early influence, first time seeing it, getting the masses. But the people that need the connection and the want and the desire and the reviews and the different buyers that come in require a lot more organic growth. And that means through blogs, podcasts, social media. All of these are new mediums that people are digesting and learning, and touch points that are ultimately be taught. And that creates what we ultimately all want and desire in the software world, especially, which is the word of mouth ultimately, right? And so when you think about that, what I think a lot of people have forgotten was that, old school days before paid ads was really a big relevant thing. Everyone would focus on SEO. What SEO really was not just ranking on Google. It was content. It was the ability to go off and talk and deliver different information out into the world. And now I know things are changing. AI, everything that comes into different places are changing this. However, there's real authentic places still exist. And the only true authentic place is social media right now. Right. And then again, you go into the generational gaps where Meta is going to be a more Gen millennial versus, something like Instagram or TikTok are going to be a Gen Z or Gen Beta or Gen Alpha market. Right. So like you have to go where the people sit and live, and you got to talk to them and engage with them in a way that they want to respond. So I do think that this is kind of part of the future. I think this is your next version of what organic really means. And even when I look at businesses and I talk to my friends, businesses that rely heavily on paid advertising have a shelf life. They struggle eventually and they die. But the companies that can figure out the organic traction to create a sustainable business will reduce CAC, not increase CAC, because what they end up doing is they've invested all that time, energy, and money upfront and early, and eventually it will create an outcome later on that they cannot measure, cannot authorize, but a lot of that came from those early days of input and output that happened. And this is something that, financial guys are always going to struggle with, because it's not a dollar in, dollar out situation. You may spend $100 to make $1 out today doing all your efforts on content and social, but in 2 years, you're going to see that $1 in is going to generate $100 and you won't figure out why. But the reality is all that stuff you put into the ether in the last 2 years is now paying out 2 years later. However, business folks, often data and finance folks, CFOs out there, can't see it that way. It was one of my biggest challenges when I've been growing brands too, is like teaching the finance people that this is how it actually works in the world, how marketing is actually effective, but people can't see that. Performance marketing is not as easy anymore. It still works, and when you're really good at it, you can do it. But the reality is most people are mediocre at performance marketing, and that's the truth behind the story.
That is true. And you said something very interesting, and I really believe in it. And for us marketers, attribution is always such a big issue. And the things that you have done, you are not able to always attribute it to some activity that you have done. So do you think like we kind of need more like tools, or like what is the gap there where this attribution is still such a huge issue after doing marketing so much? You try to get tools and they will slow down your website. You try to do something and they will do something else. So like, do you think like more innovation needs to come here, or like people just need to understand the marketing works in a totally different way?
I think that marketing has always been a very generic, hard to track item that I think that people have been trying to solve for 20, 30 years. They've been trying to figure out attribution. But the reality is attribution of marketing is extremely hard. If you have a sales process, right? And like we strip out the marketing side and you're just cold calling people, you pick up the call, you get a demo, you get on the call, you close it. Very easy to attribute, very easy to see the timeline. But with marketing, that's not the case, especially in B2B. It takes so many touch points. It takes so many things that come into place. And trying to figure out an ROI of social media is near impossible, right? But there's only one thing you can do to attribute at the end is when you make a sale, when you purely ask a customer, especially if you're in B2B, if you ask a customer, how did you hear about us, right? And oftentimes they'll say, oh, I heard you about internet. I heard you here. I heard you here. They won't give you one source often. And the reality is because a lot of these people struggle to find, they don't, not struggle, that's not the right word. People are often challenged because they didn't hear you about it in one place. They saw you in many places to find that thing. So I think that the principles of marketing are still the same as they were 50 years ago. When Pepsi was out there advertising in a newspaper, they had no idea what the ROI of their newspaper was. They just put it out there because they know that it drove actual revenue, right? So a lot of this to me is incremental. My business does this. I input this much money. How much money do I come out at the end of the month? It doesn't matter. It has to be blended with every activity that you're doing. The next month, I put a little bit more money in. Is it creating more output? It may not create output for 2, 3, 4, 5 months behind that. And the reality is you have to be able to track that and have a bigger thought process behind it. I think a lot of leaders in the space or in the B2B space struggle to understand it, especially when they come from a finance background, they got PE or VC behind them. They struggle to understand that things aren't a black and white one-to-one situation often, and that in marketing especially, attribution is always going to be one of those tough things that you can't figure out. You're just going to have to do the best job you can do, and no tool is going to solve it. Spending time on tools and spending time on more money on tools, it's not going to actually fix the problem. All you're going to do is waste time on things you shouldn't be doing, where you should be spending that time on activities that will drive. Marketing is a overall business aspect, right? It's not one little piece of the business. It's not just your sales team. It's everything that comes in, from generating leads to brand awareness to market noise. Like all of that is important. There's obviously things that matter of like trying to identify and target and speak to the right people and do activities that are important. But to attribute it and try to chase the dollars and cents in this market and looking at marketing is a fool's game ultimately. And I've continued to say that for years. I don't think it is a black and white scenario. Even when you look at something as core as email marketing, it's still not black and white. Just because they got an email, right? And they got a market, and then they see an ad and they click on the ad because they saw the email, you may attribute that to the ad, but the attribution may actually come from an email that was given to them before, right? But you will never see that with most tools. And even if you could see that, there's not enough patterns and habits to be able to track down because it's not a one-to-one game. Every person has a different and unique customer journey. Your only goal in marketing is you throw the net out, you try to attract the right people into the business, and you keep throwing that net over and over, and hopefully some of those nets bring some people in. That's all you can do.
I think that will help a lot of people, solve this, because I think every marketer goes through this. Another question I had for you, because I'm really liking this and it's very interesting to me. So I want to ask that, like, so in organic, we've been, all of us been doing SEO for a lot of years, and right now I'm also seeing people coming in from, usually asking their long tail questions on ChatGPT and on Google. And then you have your AI overviews, and then, so do you think it can create a level playing field on SEO, or people who have been consistently doing it will definitely win this game as well?
It's just like everything else. Everyone who's working on stuff today will not see output for 2 years.
Yeah.
And the people who don't give up and who they believe in the outcome will continue to work on that and will create it. It's never too late to join SEO. It's never too late to join the AI race. One thing that I think people forget is, as much as AI may be on the top of many people's head, 90% of the world has no freaking clue, man. They still go on Google and they still search. People are still on Yahoo, man. People are still on Microsoft Bing. And the reality is that people, oh, it's too late for SEO. I need to go work on this next thing. That's great. The next thing is great for the next buyer in the next generation, but SEO still is very much important. So I always tell people is like, just pick channels where your customers live and exist and continue to work on them. They're all important in this market. And I don't think there's a right answer or wrong answer to it, but I do think that these are activities you have to do. You may get really lucky and strike a lightning in a bottle and hit it and actually get some results out of it. But most likely you're going to get nothing out of it the first time. And the next 10, 20, you're going to get nothing out of it. It's going to take 30 pods before something might start to figure it. There was a study that was shown about podcasts, right? And I know you're doing a podcast, but there's a study. First of all, only 10% of podcasts get to episode 20 because most people quit before then. It takes 50 episodes before you get to any level of organic traction in most podcasts, unless you have distribution engines building and working for you, right?
Yeah.
50 podcasts is 50 hours of work, which is another, 100 hours of prep plus editing and everything else. It's an extreme amount of effort, time, and money that's put into it. And for people to find and wait for that money and relevance to come out, most people quit. It's no different than SEO. SEO is probably longer than that. I would say 6 months minimum of work before SEO drives and distributes any kind of relevance or any kind of data. And then years later, you'll start seeing it. I mean, today, when I look back at Sendlane, I invested in SEO since 2020. It wasn't until 2024 we started to see SEO output start to really create real things. And now they're getting a ton of organic views every month on their website because of all the stuff that we put into place over the last 4 years, right? That's what's fueling the business.
Got it. Yeah, that actually makes sense. And I honestly keep saying the same thing. But yeah,
well, it's the whole finance leader thing, right? Like a lot of finance people or operational people, leaders who don't understand marketing are part of the struggle in this world. I would say that as someone who's worked with people in the past that did not know marketing, when you don't know marketing and you believe that marketing is a financial data output sheet, you're going to struggle ever understanding it. And as a marketer, it's extremely challenging to work with people like that because you feel like you're always sitting there and defending yourself when a good leader who understands marketing is going to encourage you to go explore because, well, you know this fact, but 90% of the efforts you put into marketing are going to fail. That's how it's supposed to be. And you're supposed to use 10% to find it. When you find a great thing, you go dig into that well, you exploit it, you maximize it, and eventually it dries out and you got to start all over again. That's part of the thing about marketing. And a lot of finance leaders, they just want to put $1 in and get $1.50 out. And that's a perfect element. And we can't do that. We fail. Well, you go do that for 2-3 years, not putting any focus on anything. You ultimately fail at the entire business because you can never figure out the thing that's creating real growth and traction in your business. You've got to put time. You've got to put commitment behind it. You've got to go and put full effort behind these things.
Right. So I had another question. So, like what people say that there's a trend of the year always. And, like right now in 2024, everyone was saying that the podcast is the new thing. And everyone started to do podcasts no matter what. Everyone started to do that. Now in 2025, they're like, oh, the thing is guerrilla marketing. You go on the streets and you do something crazy and that goes viral. And that's the 2025 thing to do. And then every time there's these fads that come or these trends that come and everyone tries to follow that. So do you think like you need to create these trends to stay ahead of the market or not just follow trends at all and do the collective thing that you're trying to do?
Look, trends are important because they're generally early phase showing of things that are working in the market. I would say that very simply, marketers ruin everything. I'm sure you've heard that term before, right? And what happens very, very simply is that when one marketer finds something, everybody jumps into the trend of going to chase it. A lot of marketing is cyclical. And what I mean by that is it's cycles, right? Things happen, cycles will happen, and different trends will occur. Podcasts, they were popular before, they stopped being popular, become popular again. It's all about evolution of technology and medium and everything else. Look, podcasts have a special place. Not everyone listens to podcasts. Very small generation of the world listens to podcasts. Some people like YouTube, some people don't like video, some people like audio, some people like the written word. In order to reach everybody, it's not about one medium anymore and going all in. It's about having all the different mediums. That's why if I have a podcast, I'm taking that podcast, I'm making a newsletter, I'm making it a blog SEO, I'm making a blog behind it, I'm taking that blog and posting it on social. It's a 1, 2, 3. You've got to be where your customers are at. And the reality is every trend is just a new place where people can go explore. Often something that people have done in the past, they're just coming back and re-exploring it and realizing that it's an untapped place. But the reality is it was always there. It was just not something that people put energy and time in. Any place marketers put energy and time in, of course you're going to get customers. Of course you're going to be able to tap into things. Of course. That's just part of how marketing works.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So you talk a lot about retention marketing as well, and I wanted to understand that while I think most people would understand the value of retention marketing for a D2C brand, do you think retention marketing is also required for a B2B business? Because primarily they have people who are like you're with them for long anyway, or if they go, they're not satisfied with the service and they go. But like to retain them, is it just the account manager relationship that you need to have, or do you need to put some marketing in that as well?
I think that you have to. I mean, look, retention is probably look, even if you're the local convenience store on the corner or a business, anything that you're doing, retention is the greatest thing that you have to create because, as you know, it's never easier to acquire a new customer than it is to retain an old one. And so to me, one of the things that a lot of businesses fail at is everyone focuses on the top of the funnel or the new customer acquisition, and they forget often about their current customers. And that includes retaining them through marketing efforts, education, driving value ultimately, right? And driving value can mean a lot of things in every business. It's not gift cards or sending a gift basket. That's not retaining customers. That's just a way to think that monetary is going to drive that. A lot of people are not there because they wanted your free Christmas basket. What they're there for is because there's a service or value that you're driving to help them out in their everyday business that's driving their end result. So if you're a software business, you've got to be constantly innovating. You got to be educating. You got to be in there. You got to be partner to them, right? And when I mean partner, it's one of the most overused words in this market. Partner does not mean, an account manager telling me what I did wrong or right every month, or it's not about that. It's someone who's there and reliable, that can be helpful, that can help you move your business forward when you have your business challenges, and a solution that's provided. That is more valuable than anything else you can do. That often comes with some level of marketing, right? And so, yes, I believe that people don't spend enough time, especially in B2B, doing enough retention marketing, focusing on their internal customers, because not only are your internal customers the ones you don't want churning, aka you want them to stay, but they're also your biggest driver of word of mouth. And the word of mouth in B2B is incredibly hard to drive and grow unless you become someone like OpenAI or something where you have a huge business. The reality is you're never going to get there for most businesses. And if you can at least get you're a couple hundred customers, couple thousand customers to talk about you on the internet, and you can reward them and you can get them out there, those are going to be your best customers in the world. That's the truth.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
And if they can just drive you one customer, I mean, think about that. If I can get 1,000 customers to drive me one customer, I'm doubling my business. That's way easier than to go get 1,000 new customers and teach them something.
Right. Exactly.
True.
So, what about, the entrepreneurs failing in general? Like, I think that, and I'm asking you this because I want to understand, during your journey, because you've had a long journey, have you had failures or these low points where you were like, okay, this is probably not going to work out? And then how do you deal with that? Because I think just like 90% of a lot of things fail, more than 90% of startups also fail. So how do you know when to quit it and not pursue it anymore? How do you know, you have to keep fighting for it?
Yeah. So there's two things that I always think about when people ask me this question, because the first thing I'll say is most people quit before they succeed. And then most people I could also give you the statement that people don't know when to quit, when they should be quitting sooner than later, right? So there's two very contradictory things that are occurring in the market when people come into it. My answer is very simple. It's up to the entrepreneur, man. It's what you're willing to fight for and what you believe in. I believe that every idea that anyone creates, even terrible or good or whatever it might be, if they believe in it wholeheartedly enough, they will find a path of success. And I don't know what that success will always mean, but that's the reality of it. a lot of times you're right. Like entrepreneurs struggle to find their thing. And I've definitely failed many, many times along my journey, things that I've had ideas around, things that I've tried to struggle against. But, you know, one of my things that I've gotten better and better about was really stepping back, figuring out what it is that I'm trying to solve, really understanding the market behind it, and going off and diving into it. A lot of people are jumping in as risk takers. They had an idea that they did without validating it. I mean, there's a million things that come into place, but the real core of it all is talking to people and also surrounding yourself with the right people, right? 1-2 action. That really will help you kind of start figuring that out really fast. You know, for me, as I get older, you know, when I have an idea, it's not, I have an idea, I go validate it. I go talk to friends, I talk to people about it. Then I go off and explore it. And then I go off and do a little bit of math behind it to make sure that it makes sense, right? But those don't come until you get older. A lot of times when you're young, it's really just a lot of education, man. And I think failure is important. Most entrepreneurs fail a lot of times before they find a thing that creates success for them. And the reality is that that's how life works. Just like when you go to job to job to job as an employee, there's no real difference, right? And the third thing I would say is that not enough people probably go off and learn enough before they go off and start their own business too. People want to go jumping forward and they chase the money and the riches, but they forget how much is involved in being an operator of a business, not just a employee of a business. Very different things when you're thinking about what it means to be an operator of a business.
Yeah, but actually is a great answer. So Jimmy, I also read that. So do you invest in startups as well?
I do. I do angel investments. I do a little bit of advisory. I do a little bit of investing and so forth. Yes.
And you also help startups which are based in Korea?
I don't do anything in Korea. No. I mean, I'll do anything across the world, but usually the things that I work on are in the US.
Okay. So when you look at an investment, so what are the things that you see before you make your decision? That like I'm sure that some are the basic things that any investor sees, but there's something that you over-index on. Like if this might be a deal breaker or a red flag in a founder or a company and a product, that I should not do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple for me when I make investments. One, do they do something? Are they solving a problem that I believe in? Right? Very black and white. Do I understand it and do I believe in it? If I don't understand it or I don't believe in it, there's no dice. And then secondly, it becomes the founder. I only care about the founder. I mean, even if the business has no revenue often, it's, hey, I look at this founder and do I believe that they've got the power to fight through all the struggles they're going to challenge, and do they have the power to figure it out? Or have they failed enough, or have they been unemployed long enough in other things that they've done before they become a business? These are all things I look into. But for me, I probably over-index the founder more than anything else, right? Because no matter what they tell me when they're raising an angel or seed fund, in most cases, they're going to pivot most likely. Unless they're just perfectly spot on to the thing, which most of them aren't, they're going to pivot. The better the founder, the better they're going to realize the pivot needs to happen, and the better pivot they're going to take. So founder is probably what I care about most. Who's running the business? I believe in that first, then everything else is secondary.
Understood. And what is the main channel that, if I can ask, you have made money from? So for like a lot of people tell me that we have been entrepreneurs for years, and now after content creation, that is the most amount of money that I've seen. And then the people, like, for them, one startup when sold might make a lot of money. So it's different for everyone. So like for you, like, can you tell me the year in which you made the most money? Can you tell me Yeah.
So my most money was made, as I told you, when I ran a affiliate content software business, and then I exited that business. So during the time that I was running the business, it was a very profitable cash cow, and then the exit was very good. And to your point, you're 100% right. The places where most people make a lot of business money is on an exit, which doesn't happen very often. The second place where you make a lot of money is really just being in a good role in the middle, right? So like, I would say that an agency can actually make a lot of money if you're looking for cash flow versus a software build out versus a lot of other things in the world, because you don't have a lot of overhead. The problem that a lot of people have is making revenue is not hard. What's hard is figuring out a cost structure that makes sense for the business. Can I make money and actually keep it, right? A lot of things, if you have a physical product, you have a software where you're doing R&D, you're doing all these other things, money is going out the door just as fast as it's coming in. But in a place where services and time and people are the only costs, that's where money is made. So for me, the two places that have been really driving and fruitful for me have been, when I ran the lifestyle business, it was a, content creation company, or, grew a lot on content and organic growth, sold products that had very good margins, obviously made me a lot of money. And then of course, even today, I do very well today, just purely because I have no overhead costs except for the people that are in my company.
Yeah, right. So how do you, because even like right now you're doing a lot of things, right? So like how do you typically manage your schedule? Like how is it difficult managing that? How are you able to prioritize, spending time with your business and spending time with your family? I'm sure that's also very important to you. So is there any way, because people do struggle with this, they trying to find the integrating their work and professional life and their personal life. So how do you go about it? Do you have a plan about it, or you just wing it?
So in the early days, I would tell you that I winged it. I worked really hard. I grinded. I worked 9 to 9, and I was killing myself over it. As I got older, and as I started to realize the biggest skill set that I've had is that something that I never would have thought when in my younger days that I would believe in, but I believe in scheduling. I believe in time blocks, and I believe in knowing what you're going to effectively do each and every day in planning, from to-do lists to ensuring that your calendar is set up for success. Everything for me is planned. And when I work about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning after I work out and do all the things that I need to do in the morning and make sure my kids are off to school. And then I work till about 6 o'clock when my kids come home from their after-school activities and everything else. And I'm off, man. And I don't work on weekends except for on my own projects, but I don't grind till midnight or 2 a.m. I did that in my younger days, but I also realized part of the reason I did a lot of that is because I was inefficient with my time.
Yeah.
Browsing social, chatting on the phone, doing things that are unnecessary to move the business forward. And if you really quickly realize that, you realize that in a given day of 10, 8, 10, 12 hours, you're only really working 3 to 4 real effective hours. The rest of the time is BS. And if you can concentrate on those 3 to 4 hours and just put those in and get those things done, your business moves forward. You can't get everything done in a day. It takes a long time to have and build the things that you need to build. And in order to build those things, you need to have the patience to do it. So you'll get the things you need to do there. You create milestones. When I create a goal, I don't try to go from A to Z overnight. I try to create my milestones and steps to get up to those goals. And each one of those are what I need to accomplish each and every day to get to that final goal, right? Yeah. So that's what I tell people is like, how do I effectively? I'm scheduling, I'm time blocking, I'm being realistic, and I'm being patient. All the things that are hard for people to understand when they're young, the older you get, the more you realize that that's the only way you get through life without killing yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I am a big advocate of time management as well. And you can actually finish your work in 3 hours if you're really efficient. I totally believe that. And and so maybe we, a couple of months ago, our company collaborated with you, and then later you eventually ended up hiring a virtual assistant from us. So if I can just ask very quickly, how is that working out for you?
It's been great, actually. When you guys came to us, we were already in the process of trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And the challenge was very simple. We were trying to go off and hire someone as our own independent contractor directly because the cost savings are there, right? But what we struggled to do is finding the right people, right? We went to the typical places like onlinejobs.ph and Upwork and different places to try to find it. But trying to manage an interview and trying to find people is extremely hard. And then the risk is extremely high. And what I mean by that is if you hire the wrong person, you're going to burn time, energy, and money. So when you guys came to us, it allowed us to kind of take a look at you guys and say, hey, these guys might be solving a real problem in the business. And if they're really doing the work on vetting and ensuring that you're getting the right people into the business, well, then that might solve a problem and I'm okay to pay the premium on it, right? The reality is very simple for me, right? If I'm paying, let's just say, $1,500 versus $2,000 versus $3,000 a month for the same person, let's just pretend, right? My time, energy on two things. One, finding someone and also retaining them is way more valuable than the little bit of money that really creates an output that it creates. And when you can start to realize that that's really the way you have to think about things when it comes to business with everything. Even an employee, man. Too many people struggle. They're like, oh, I don't want to pay him 50 grand a year because I really want to pay 40 grand a year. Well, if you minimize that down to looking at $833 a month for 12 months, that's nothing if you believe you found the right person. But the problem that people have is they're so set on the hard numbers, they forget to look at the reality. Can this person reduce $833 more of work a month? If the answer is yes, you should hire them regardless if it's in your budget or not, right? So for me, the same thing with Wishup, like, finding you guys and saying, okay, these guys are doing a service, they're doing the vetting, they're doing the things that we want to do. Why wouldn't I want to jump forward with these guys? And so we went and jumped forward and been very happy, and obviously have a really great team member now is joined. He's integrated into our culture and works our hours and does the things we need to do. And that's all we can ask for, and it helps us move forward.
That's great to know. So Jimmy, before we sign off and close this, I have this little segment in my podcast which is called it's a rapid fire round. Okay, so I will ask you 5 questions, and you just give me quick answers.
Sure.
Right? As simple as that. So okay, let me just take out the questions. Right. So the first question for you, Jimmy, is can you tell me a SaaS company you admire and that you wish you would have built instead?
Oh, I mean, it's probably OpenAI today. I mean, it's just amazing, right? Like, God, amazing. Any of those guys.
Right. That makes sense. So what is the best industry to start a D2C business today?
It's probably supplements because it's the easiest one to get started in.
Okay, nutrition supplements you're talking about.
It's probably supplement, neutral, health and beauty, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I agree with that. What is one marketing advice that has not aged well? It doesn't work today.
What marketing advice has not aged well? I actually don't know. I think marketing hasn't changed that much. What hasn't aged well? No, I don't really have anything. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah, because you think the principles are pretty much the same.
Yeah, they're all the same principles at the end of the day. I mean, sure, there's channels and different things that come into place, but like the principles are the same and they don't evolve that much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an acceptable answer. So Jimmy, if you lost all your money today and you had to start over, what's the first thing you would do?
I would just go out and find a client to pay me to do something.
And what would that thing be? What do you think?
It wouldn't matter. It would be trying to figure out what their pain point is and seeing if I could do a job doing that. Okay.
Yes. Perfect. Realistic. And finally, just one piece of advice to other founders.
Patience. Patience is part of the game. You can't run A to Z. Stop listening to the media. Stop listening to how everyone went from $0 to $1 billion in 12 months. Most people will never do that. It takes patience, man. And it's your own race, and don't try to run the same race that everybody else is running.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Jimmy, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah,
I had a lot of fun. I think I had a great conversation. I learned a lot, honestly. And, I hope we can meet again soon. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Well, thanks for having me, and I can't wait to listen to this when it comes out, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jimmy. See you.
All right, see you.